a drawing. This is Miss Olson, and I'm going to go over the depth and then the warm versus cool colors assignment with you in this short video. So basic idea is start with 6 little mini thumbnail landscapes. They're going to be really small, next to my finger. Look how small these are. They're pretty little. The goal is not to spend a lot of time on here, do them really fast, right? That's not our focus. Our focus is going to be on colors. And you have a few things that you need to do for these. So I recommend actually grabbing your colored pencils or your pastels and then marking them at top like I did here so that you sort of don't forget. So for the first one, I give you the colors you need to do. You need to do the background with blue, the middle ground with purple, and the foreground with red. That's also why I marked F, because some of these were reversed. So I wanted to make sure I knew which ones were supposed to be the foreground. For the second one, you need to choose 2 colors that are just basically 2 complementary colors. They're opposites on the color wheel. So you'll have a color and then you'll skip, I think it's 3 spots, and then you'll skip another 3 spots again. So you'll have 2 sides and then 1 in the middle. Then you reverse it in order, going from warmest to coolest. On here, number 4, you're going to choose a color and skip 3 spots and then do a different color. And then you'll mix the 2 together. So you're not even grabbing a color, you're going to mix these 2 together to get the middle one. And for number 5, you'll pick a color and then you'll do a warm version of it and then a cooler version of the same color. So same color, slight variation on number 5. And number 6, you get to choose, but you still want to set it up so that it goes from cool in the background to warm in the foreground. So how would I get this sort of set up? Let's see here. I'll grab my blue, which is going to be in the background. And the background is anything that is furthest away from us. And you fill in your color as you would. A gentle, smooth layer first. You want to get this nice and smooth as much as possible. So generally your background is going to be your sky. Not always, but sometimes, most of the time. So I've got blue, it's my cool color, it's my cold color. Blue tends to be the coldest version of the colors that you can get. Meanwhile, yellow or red, kind of depending on how you're looking at it. Those are your warmer colors. So I would recommend doing a few more layers in this to get a nice, consistent, beautiful color going. But you could do the whole thing instead. So then I'm going to skip the middle ground and go to my red in my foreground. That's anything that's closest to us. So this sort of section up here. And it might be difficult depending on how you sort of designed your stuff, what counts as foreground and what counts as middle ground. Because sometimes, like if you have a river like I do going through, it's in both. So you'll sort of have to make a decision. So I'm going to actually make the river the red color going through here. So I've got the red there. And then I'm going to need my purple in between. So it goes from coolest to warmest. Purple's a difficult color with colored pencils. In my box, my current Crayola box, it leans towards red. So if you're having the same problem that I am, where your color isn't quite accurate, you can leave it as is. It's not going to be great. It's not going to be the best. Or what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to take a little bit of the thing it's missing, so a little bit more blue, and just overlay a gentle layer on top of that so that it's more in the middle. There. So we've got cool, middle, warm. that's just the first layer. I would like you to go through and do a few more layers just to clean it up, make your colors nice and vibrant. If you need to go through and reline some of your shapes so that they're more visible, mine sort of disappeared, do so. Make it so you can actually see where the shapes are. And then move on to your next one. So in this one, I want my foreground to be yellow. My background is going to be that purple. And these are opposites to each other on the color wheel. Complete opposites, they're complementaries. They're the most different that you can get, so they can pop. They're really lively with each other. But they can be challenging to each other as well. Like they can be a little too different. So the idea then is to grab something in the middle of them, like this red-orange here, which is completely in the center of the two opposites, and use that to kind of marry them together slightly. So we go from the cooler purple to the warmer yellow in the foreground. Grab a little bit of red. This is just kind of a flat orange. So we want a little bit of red to make it that red orange. And you can see here going from cool to middle to warm. And the goal here, right? The goal here is really to pay attention. Pay super attention to your depth. How can you make things look far or close? How can you marry things together that might be slightly different from each other so that they look like they get along? And that's to kind of unify the colors in those sections so that they have some similarities. So this is a pretty extreme example, but think of it more loosely, maybe a little bit more subtly. So let's say I've got this sort of setup here. Instead of having the mountains be bright orange, maybe they're going to be that brown color that you're thinking of for the mountains, but it's pushed to orange. And maybe these mountains, which would be closer, maybe they're greener. Maybe you're pushing a little bit of brown, which would be orange, into them to kind of keep those sections solidified. And then up here, maybe you have lots of bushes and such. So those are greens and the browns of the twigs and such. So maybe you have a little bit more yellow in this section. So you don't have to go quite as extreme. I'm pushing extremes here because I want you to be able to really see it clearly, how you can section off areas. This one, number 3, it's just going to be a reverse of number 2. So my purple will be down here, my red-orange will be here, and then my yellow will be in the background. Because most of the time the coldest is going to be in the back, but not all the time. For number 4, I'm going to have some mixing practice here. So in the background is my yellow. In the foreground is the blue. So these are 2 primaries. If you do a secondary like orange, you'll have another secondary like purple or green. But since I chose yellow, my other color here will be blue or red, depending on which direction you go on that color wheel. So have your color wheel out and ready when you're doing this project. And don't guess. You're not guessing here. You're using the color wheel and you're jumping a certain amount of steps. All right, so when I get to the middle, I'm mixing the two colors. I recommend always starting with your lightest color first. So in this case, it's yellow. And I'm not doing a very heavy layer. So pretty light layer, not nearly as intense as the sky has gotten. And then I'm going to go with blue over top. So ideally, this will turn green. I might have to mix a few layers to get there. It happens. But just like the others, you're going to go from a warm color to a cool color in a direction. You kind of get to pick on this one what direction the warm and cool goes. So you can already see how these are mixing together to create green. So you can use the color straight from your box, or sometimes you'll get a better effect, a more interesting effect if you mix them together. So yellow, green, blue. For this one, we're really looking at one color at a time. So for me, I chose orange. Thinking about my color wheel, right? What way would I need to shift orange to make it feel warmer than it is? And the answer is red. So I'll add a little bit of red to one side. And then the opposite of red is going to be towards the cooler end, and that's yellow. And yellow is still a pretty warm color. It's still a pretty warm color, but we're starting to shift towards green, which is cooler. So if you're not feeling like your warm colors are cool enough, you can always add a little bit of gray to it. So I'm going to add a little bit of gray to that yellow. If you're in the colder section and you're not feeling like you're getting warm enough, you can always add maybe a little brown to it to do the opposite of gray. So gray would be to cool down, brown would be to warm up if you need to push it a little bit further. Some colors are easier to have a warm and a cool version of them. So in the center, that's where I'm going to have my main color, is orange. Again, take your time, go through, warm it, get some nice thick layer of color on here. Because you're practicing for your final landscape, and you don't want to have thin, unattractive color on your landscape. You want it to look good. So use your techniques that you've been learning, practice with them, because practice is going to get you to be better. So I've got orange here. And now I want my foreground to be the warmer version. So I'm going to do orange again. I'm going to layer some red over top, because I can go warmer that way. So I don't want to turn it red. I just want a warmer version. And this is going to help you start to see subtleties and how subtleties can have an impact on the depth in your image, the warm versus cool. little yellow into this orange because it's reading a little bit too red for me. Yeah, the colors straight from your box aren't going to be perfect. They're not going to always be everything you need. Sometimes they'll be a little bit off. So you'll have to mix in your colors in order to achieve some of the colors that you do want. All right, so just like the other one, I'm going to start off with my lightest color first. And then I'm going to add a bit of the orange over top to push it towards orange. And because this is still fairly warm, even after doing this, the yellows is still a really warm color. Let's smooth this out. I'm going to go ahead and add some of that gray just to cool it off slightly. Not a lot, but just a little. And these subtleties is actually, they're going to be how you shine with your landscape. All right, there. So let's refine that. Alrighty. So now I've got my color, I've got a cooler version of it and a warmer version of it. So number 6 is going to be your choice. You get to choose the colors. 3, the goal is to think about warm and cool though. So the coolest goes in the background, the warmest goes in the foreground, and then something in between. If you have any questions, let me know.